If it's okay, I'm going to stand here. I don't even think this microphone works now, but I'm going to stand here anyway because I've always wanted to be a game show host. And I think it's as close as I'm going to get. Has it been enough time that I can make a this is where I can practice my Oscar speech and see if someone will attack me? Are we back to being able to? Hi, my name is Will. My book is How Lucky. It came out in May of 2021. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a sports writer by trade, in addition to writing all of this other stuff. I live in Athens, Georgia, so I'm very happy to be in the place of the state of the former two-time national champions. Oh, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, that's what I thought. Georgia fans have been waiting a long time to be able to say something like that. Okay, yeah. So how did the book festival go? Well, I made everybody angry in the first 10 to 15 seconds. My book is How Lucky. It is actually my fifth book because as I said, I still do work as a sports writer. I was actually known mostly for writing about sports. I founded a website called Deadspin, which was weirdly popular way too fast, and I learned very quickly that making my living online was going to be too stressful and too painful and frankly too mean to do on a regular basis. So I left to go work for New York Magazine. I lived in New York City at the time. And my other books had been about sports, or I'd written a collection of essays, but I hadn't really thought about, I always wanted to write a novel, and I was planning on doing it, and then my fourth book did not sell well at all. I think the horror story for any author is there's a company called Hyperion that bought the book. The editor-in-chief bought it himself. He said, I'm so excited to publish this book. I cannot wait. We're going to make this a centerpiece of everything. And then he left 4 months before the company comes out. And how rude of him to enjoy his own life and think of his own needs when I had a book coming out. Very, very rude. And I hope he's actually very happy. We're all for him, actually. So I did write a book for a very long time. And I still lived in New York. I wrote for New York Magazine. I was still writing about sports. I actually was just recently at the Super Bowl, which I believe was won by the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they actually still won that one. I think so. I think they're just winning all of them. They actually won the dunk contest the other day. It's just they're racking them up. I lived in New York, and I met my wife, who was from Columbus, Georgia, out in New York. And we got married in 2010, had our first son in 2011, and all of a sudden our Brooklyn apartment felt weirdly small all of a sudden. And so we actually looked around and decided to move to Athens, Georgia. And when we got there, we started spending a lot of time with her childhood best friend, who was also from Columbus and then lived in Charleston, South Carolina. And fortunately for us, her and her wife's son, Miller, was the same age as William. And so my wife, and Easton was her name, and Lindsay is her wife's name, and they... Easton and my wife had been friends since they were like 3 months old. So we were like, this is so exciting. We're they're gonna be best friends forever, and they're gonna totally hang out all the time. And so they were literally like a year and a half old, and maybe a little bit younger. And we noticed that Miller, my son's name is William, named after his father, not named after me. So his grandfather. Sorry, I screwed up that joke. I screwed up that joke and made it funnier. That was awesome. That was great. I was subconsciously funny. Or was I subconsciously right? Anyway, point is, that's awesome. So we were very excited to have them be such good friends, and we noticed that Miller was having trouble putting weight on his, they do the floppy leg thing, you try to get and he couldn't hold weight, and so Easton and Lindsay were obviously a little concerned, but they didn't think much about it, and then they went and got him tested, and they discovered that he had a disease called spinal muscular atrophy, which is, I don't know if anyone knows spinal muscular atrophy. It's always a little surprising the number of people who read How Lucky and say that's the first time that they've heard of it. But to be fair, I had not heard of it at all until my son's best friend was diagnosed with it. And so spinal muscular atrophy way too, like, if you want, we could make the rest of this just a very specific scientific definition. Probably don't want that. You want more jokes, accidental paternity jokes from me. Instead, I'll just say the shorthand version, which is not 100% correct, but it's close enough, it's a little bit like ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease for children, for babies. And generally speaking, the doctor told Miller that, Miller is otherwise very healthy and very intelligent, but said, listen, you should know that like the lifespan, he's got type 1, type 0, basically the disability he has, he's probably not going to make it past like 23 or 24. And because basically what it does is it atrophies the muscles. Daniel, the main character in the book, who I'm going to talk about in a moment, jokes that it's like reverse CrossFit, which is to say it actually eats you at the core and then out, as opposed to what it's supposed to do. Evil CrossFit, I think was what he said. But anyway, so we were obviously very devastated and very, very worried. But we still, Miller, they started having a race every year called the Go Miller Go 5K in Charleston. We would always go, we loved Miller, and William was, like, he was too young to really understand. And so we spent this time at this race, and I noticed that every time I went, even the most, like, good-hearted, like, it's there to raise awareness, but even the most good-hearted people would still talk to everyone who had SMA, but like, oh, so are you here for the race? Are you here? And I couldn't help. I saw Miller just, and William was like, I think people talk to Miller like he's like, I'm like, yeah, I know what you don't say it, but I know what you're saying. And so I spent a lot of time talking to other people with SMA there, and they said, yeah, it's really freaking annoying. And so I really got kind of obsessed with that kind of idea, spent a lot more time talking to Miller and talking to families with SMA. And this was around 2018. And I thought maybe I would like to do a book. I was thinking about trying to do a book. And around 2018, I don't know how you were in 2018, but I feel like the nation was like a little bit stressed. And it felt like a lot of people were talking past one another. And so I kind of got really obsessed with the idea of communication and an inability to hear or be heard. And I realized I wanted to write about someone I started thinking I would write about someone with SMA. And then I kind of realized, actually, this is really about communication. And so I sat down, and that was how Daniel happened. Daniel is the main character of How Lucky. He is 26 years old. He lives in Athens. He lives by himself. He's 26, so he is, he's pretty old for some, but some people with SMA can live to 40 or 50 or even older, and some don't make it past 90 in this particular brand of SMA. And so I got really obsessed with the idea of Daniel, of that idea. And Daniel just, not to use the term familiar, but Daniel did just kind of do this. And once I kind of figured out who Daniel was, the thing that's specific about Daniel is Daniel believes people are good. And to the point, one of the things that Daniel talks about at the beginning of the book is what Daniel's job is. He answers social media for a regional airline, which is to say he gets yelled at all day, every single day. And so he spends all this time online, basically answering complaints from travelers. And he realized, but it actually gives him a different perspective. He starts to kind of actually enjoy it, because he's like, people are always so like fake nice to me. It's kind of nice to have people being very cruel to me, and it makes him feel kind of free. And so what happens is, but he actually talks a lot about how the small little moments of kindness that happen every single day that we don't ever mention. He actually refers to because he said, listen, if everyone were the way they were on social media, we would constantly be killing each other with a trident. Like, we'd constantly be like murdering each other. But he's like, we don't actually. Society is not like that. People actually want to be nice. They're not always nice. They're often not nice, but they want to be. And he kind of talks about that simple little notion of when you're walking into some sort of place and someone holds the door open for you for a second, there's no social capital for it. There's no reason. Like, if they left it shown the person, there wouldn't be a fight. No one would think that you were a jerk. But we just do it. We just have like millions of moments where we think of people around us all the time, and no one like tweets, "OMG, someone was to hold the door for me at the Piggly Wiggly today," but they happen, and I think they probably just have like electric doors now, so you don't need to hold those. You can just kind of wave, I guess. But anyway, so basically, Daniel just believes the world's going to be okay, and he lives a relatively uneventful life. He lives in Athens, Georgia, which is the home of the two-time. No, I don't need to say that again. And he lives in Athens, Georgia, and he has a caregiver named Marjani, and is his best friend from childhood named Travis, who is probably based on what I would love for my son to be the kind of friend he is to Miller someday. Though Travis makes unhealthier life choices than I would like my son to make when he's older. Well, I'll lecture him about it later. Anyway, so basically what happens is Daniel one day is looking out his window, and he sees a student get in a car, and and the student kind of waves at him for a second, and then gets in the car, and then 2 days later, there she is disappeared. This person's disappeared. He thinks he knows something. He doesn't know. He's trying to research, and he's trying to, in a lot of ways, be heard. So him and Marjani and Travis try to alert the authorities and still try to solve what's going on, and all sorts of hijinks happen. I didn't actually, when I wrote this book, because I'm known primarily as a sports writer, at least was until I got to meet you fine people. I'd like to note, by the way, I was saying this backstage, I was just at the Super Bowl. One definite thing I know if I'm at a sports event, or if I know if I'm at a book event, if I'm at a sports event, the men's bathroom is so long, the line. And here it is, I'm like, zoom right in there. But anyway, so I actually, because I was mostly known for writing sports, I have an agent. My agent is a man named David Gernert. Now, David Gernert actually has a company called David Gernert Associates, where many agents work for him. But David himself only has 7 clients. John Grisham, and 6 people who are not John Grisham. I am one of those 6, and which is to say he has clients that he does not necessarily need an immediate financial windfall from. And he's able to just kind of like their work and say, if you ever have an idea or something, we'll work on it. We're his pet projects. We're his I call us the non-grizzes. I don't call us that. That would be weird. I don't even know who the other 6 guys are. 6 people are. Anyway, so I actually, and so he had always told me, you should do a sports book. That's what you're known as. You should write a sports book. And I just wanted to tell Daniel's story. So I just wrote it without telling him. And I actually wrote it in my spare time, and wrote it, I think like a lot of starting out writers, I wrote it just whenever I was not, writing about whatever LeBron was doing. And I wrote the whole thing. And then I was in New York. I used to host a television show that was not very popular and no one watched. But so thanks. You could have watched it, and this book would have never happened because I'd be a TV star. So thank you. But anyway, so I basically emailed him. I was like, David, I'm going to be in New York next week. Let's have dinner. And I hadn't talked to him in a few years because I hadn't written any books for him. It had been 10 years since I wrote a book. And so I literally printed it out and handed it to him. And I said, I don't care if this gets if it's with the University of Boise, third press, whatever it is. I just want the ISBN number. Just get this in the world. I don't care. And he's like, great, thank you. I'm glad you had your big dramatic moment to hand me this to you, but now I got to carry this crap around all night. I was like, I'll take it. I've got a disc. I'll email it to you tomorrow. It's not like it's like the 80s, like an 80s movie where you'd leave it in the cab and you'd never hear from it again. I have a copy. I have Dropbox. I know how it works. And he read it, and he said, I think we can do something with this. And so we sent it out. When you are John Grisham's agent, you have you get the ear of a lot of publishers. He got the ear of 30, none of whom wanted it. So I was like, I wish you actually knew fewer people. I would be less depressed. So we went over 30. We worked a little bit. The main thing that kept happening was people because people were very upset. Like, one of the things that's weird for me is I know that books, we all have our genres. Like, we all want to know what part of the shelf that it goes. And this is my first novel, and I read a lot of books, but I just don't really think of it in genres. To me, it's just like there's a bunch of empty pages, and I can't believe it. There was nothing there, and then I made it. It's a book. You can do whatever you want to with it. And like, that's just the part of the fun, right? Like, the idea that like, I should make sure to hew to this convention and this convention. So in the infinite amount of space I could possibly fill those empty pages with. So I just wrote it and didn't really think about that. And so a lot of people were, and the story is, there's a clear story arc and things happen in the book, but really, I would argue it's really about Daniel. Daniel was the one I kind of had figured out first, and then I realized I can't actually just have Daniel talk to you for 250 pages. I need something for Daniel to do, and so that's what then the story kind of came. And people really loved Daniel, and they loved the book. But this was around the time of like really Gone Girl was like still kind of taking over the world, which is a wonderful book, by the way. This is not meant to be a criticism of Gone Girl in any way, but it was so popular that like anything with that sort of thing, they wanted to have like a bunch of twists and so on. And at one point, one person was like, we will buy it, but you need to make the caregiver like part of the kidnapping. And I said, no, we won't even publish the thing if you're going to do that. And they said, okay, we won't. Then forget it. Enjoy your hobby horse, Mr. Guy without a published book. And then finally we found the right editor. We found the right editor, a man named Noah Eaker at Harper Books, which is perhaps not surprisingly an offshoot imprint of HarperCollins. And he said, this is the book we want. This is what we want to do. And we want you to make it what it is. We'd like you to help out a little bit with your whole what shelf it goes on sort of thing. So I'm sure for those of you that have read the book, which is probably just the people that invited me here, the beginning of it was very frustrating because that was the thing that a lot of publishers said. They said, we don't know what this book is. Is it contemporary fiction? Is it a thriller? Is it a coming of age story? And I had no answers for them because I don't know. And so I got so kind of frustrated after a while. I was like, I'm going to try a new starter for the book. And so I got so frustrated that the first line of the book became, my life is not a thriller. And of course, everybody read like, oh, it's a thriller. Okay, I know what this is now. And so it became a thriller, and now it is out there. So I've been very, very fortunate. It came out in May of 2021, and I was very fortunate. Book of the Month Club picked. I recommend Book of the Month Club to anyone. I think it's terrific. It's a terrific thing. I know Amazon is not always the most popular thing in the world, but they did pick it as one of their best books of the year and made a billboard in Times Square of it. So don't use them for your health care. It's bad. Don't use them for your health care, and please buy local. However, I would like my local, the great Avid Bookshop in Athens, Georgia, to get me a billboard. That would be awesome. They could get me a billboard. Well, we got a lot of support. One of the primary things of support we got was actually from, as she mentioned, Stephen King. And I do not know Stephen King. I have no connections to Stephen King. We were sending the book out for blurbs in the middle of the pandemic, and so I had no idea. I didn't know. I don't think my editor even knows Stephen King. And I think this really says something about Stephen King that I'm a first-time author he knows nothing about. We have no connections, no end. This thing was just sitting, it was just piling up with the thousands of other books that were sitting there. He thought it was interesting, sat down and read it and said, oh my God, I love this. How can I help? And that, to me, says so much. It says less about the book and more about Stephen King. The idea that one of the most successful authors in the world is it loves reading and loves the industry so much that he will I want to see something new, and and it was really incredible. Though we didn't actually know, my editor did not tell me he was doing that until he tweeted it. Stephen King tweeted about how much he loved the book at like 11:30 on like a Friday night. so that blew up my weekend a little bit. But I think it really speaks to that idea of him being a guy that embraced it, that just wants. He didn't have to do that. If I make it to 73, and frankly, I don't know, I just don't like my odds. I smoked for a long time, and I drink a Diet Coke, and it's. If I make it, it'll be great. But more power to me. Is there any water? I should get some water, actually. But anyway, I would love to be able to do something like that, and to still love the industry so much to do that. And so we got very nice blurbs from Richard Russo. I've become very good friends with Kevin Wilson, who's been here before and just wrote the fantastic "Now Is Not the Time to Panic," which is a wonderful, wonderful book. That was also one of the recent Jenna Bush picks. So I've been very fortunate to be able to have that, but I still feel a little like, if I'm being entirely honest, a little bit of a poser at these sort of events, because I'm gonna totally write a piece about baseball tomorrow. Like, I'm just gonna, you can't stop me. You can't stop me. I'm gonna write a piece about baseball, and the nope, not gonna get done. So for me, that is one of one of the things that's been so incredible to me is, and I think any author can tell you this, the idea of something that did not exist. The idea, like before I kind of was able to catch a break with that Deadspin site, I wrote for years with nobody reading me, let alone anybody paying me. And so the idea that there are people in this room that have read the book, there are like actual authors back there, like really good ones, who at least are being polite by saying, "Oh, it's good to see you here," is incredible to me, because I really. Something that it was a passion project. How Lucky was a passion project, and that I would have been perfectly happy having, again, like, I would have self-published if I had to. I was hoping, the Boise thing was my hope, but so fortunately, How Lucky has sold well enough now that this is where the next part of the evening comes, where I'm writing 2 more books. One is already done. Oh my gosh, I have it right here. It's crazy. Huh. I don't know who put this here, but good advance work. But it's called The Time Has Come, and it also it takes place in the same universe as How Lucky. How Lucky takes place in in September of 2019 I'm sorry, now I actually have to describe the book a little bit, and I'm going to use a Georgia football thing, but it's before they won the national championship, so there's no taunting. In fact, there's several characters in the book being like, "We're never going to win one." So obviously an alternative fiction, a history fiction, a multiverse, unlike the awesome one we currently live in now. Anyway, but that book, one of the things, once I realized that this book was going to take place in 1 week, I figured I had to make it a game week, and so it's actually a game week, and so the book came out in May 2021, and of course there was no tailgating during the 2020 football season, so a lot of people read the book and be like, "Oh, I remember tailgating." I remember tailgating so much, and it was funny because Daniel is not actually a sports fan himself, but part of his love and part of the reason I wrote the book is Athens itself. To me, Athens is one of the things I love the most about Athens is it is a place where all different sorts of people can come. It is hard. I lived in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn for 9 years, and I met a whole bunch of people who agreed with me on everything, which was fine. Other than I was less into oat milk. They were much more into oat milk than I was. But yeah, that's true. They really, that stuff's disgusting. But anyway, and kale. I don't like kale. Can I just say it? That's why I'm going to not make it a 73, I guess. Anyway, but I like places that have diversity of thought, diversity of people. I like a place like Athens where there's a reason, I don't think it's an accident that Georgia has become such a political flashpoint over the last 5 years, because it is a place that has so many different types of people, many of which I disagree with, but also like are in the carpool line with my family when I gotta pick up my kids. And I have, and I think one of the things that Daniel kind of talks about in the book too is the idea of like we kind of do still all live together. And so one of the things I love about Athens is, and I write about this in How Lucky, and it's even more of a thing in The Time Has Come, which is out on May 16th, 2021. It's available for pre-order from wherever your bookstores may or may not find it. The thing that is wonderful about tailgates is you get the burly farmers coming in from Oconee County, and you get the old boulevard hipsters from the old music scene in Athens. You get the professors, and you get it's such a wonderful place where you have all different kinds of people who may not agree with each other on anything and may not actually even associate or commiserate with them, and then on a football Saturday they all just come together and bark at each other. And the book is not about football. I want to be very clear about that. But it is about that general notion of us all kind of living in the same place, and Daniel hopefully being able to be. I miss Daniel a lot. I understand. Everyone has different ways of writing books. For me, I just love Daniel. I wish I were more like him. So he is not. Even though it takes place, the next book takes place in the same universe. He is not in the next book. I think whenever you read the book, you will see. I think we've generally told his story. But there are smaller characters in How Lucky that are larger characters in the next book, which I like. I like the idea of an ongoing world. Daniel is referred to at one point in The Time Has Come. So I like it all kind of living in the same place. But my main thing, because I love to take questions, by the way. So I'm going to if you don't have any, please pretend. Just ask if you don't have any questions, raise your hand and ask me what time it is. Or that's fine. I've got answers for that. It's remember when we used to be able to call time and temperature? When there was a number that you called time and temperature? That number was so stuck in my head that this is actually true. Every time a character in one of my books says a phone number, it's that number. 2588463. That number will be stuck in my brain forever because that's how you found out what it was like outside for a large part of our lives. It makes me sound a little older than I actually am, but not that much older than I actually am. Anyway, but for me, I've been very fortunate, like I think a lot of authors here, to do really the thing that you could possibly dream of, and what you possibly dream of, which is make your passion project your life. And I'm often, because I don't just write about sports, I write about politics, which is always fun. And I write about politics, I write about entertainment, and I host podcasts. I like to make things. As you may have noticed, I am a high energy person. Sometimes I'm told I talk a little fast. I think you are listening too slowly. But I would say that to me, what I love about writing is a friend of mine once described what it's like to listen to me, and you get now all of you now understand this. But listening to me talk is a little bit like being in a room with watching me in a room with a bunch of locked doors, and I'll go here oh, that was locked, and I'll back up and I'll start a new topic, and oh, that was locked, and then you finally find the right door. I'm oh, that's what I was trying to say, and I walk through that door. To me, the beauty of writing is you don't see me get all the wrong doors. I just get the right door, and I just walk through it. And I've kind of always had I'm a high energy, optimistic, in the face of all available evidence, optimistic person who I think the one thing I do share with Daniel is I actually do think people are either good or want to be, and even when they are flawed, I think it's something that we all do kind of share. We often, I would argue, fall prey to fear and fall prey to the unknown. In ways that are very damaging to ourselves and others. But I do think people want to do the right thing. And this, in both in How Lucky and The Time Has Come, people have read the books. You tend to write about people are flawed and they make mistakes and they do things and they have their histories and their things and their regrets. But generally speaking, they all mean well. And with the exception of the bad guy in How Lucky, but I'm not going to tell you about that yet. It's a spoiler, but there's a bad guy. I mean, someone got in the car and took her away. Someone did it. And that's true because I actually like writing about nice people because, as anyone can tell you that's written a book, you spend a lot of time with these people, and I like to surround myself with people that I like. And so it's more fun for me to write about people who are flawed and make mistakes, but are generally on the right side of the force and want to do the right thing. And the next book, I'm careful of saying the plot of the next one, which is a problem, because for How Lucky, you're man with a disability witnesses a crime and tries to report the crime. Boom, got it. Tries to report, solve the crime, done. This is, okay, so there's 7 people, and so I'm not going to give away too much except to say that it has a larger cast of characters who, at the beginning of the book, it's made very clear that an event is going to happen An unexpected event is going to happen at the end of a day, and then the book starts, and you follow each of those 6 people throughout the day as they lead to that moment, and you get to know them, and then a moment of peril arises, and then you see how everyone reacts accordingly. That's a really long elevator pitch, and my agent is really, really mad at me that I haven't come up with something better for that yet. But nevertheless, I like writing about nice people, and I like hanging out with nice people. I like meeting nice people, and those are my favorite kind of people. So thank you for all being nice people. And so if anyone has a question, and you are nice, and you do not know the time. I'm sorry. By that I mean that you know the time. The time. The trick is to make all your titles available to be puns and introductions at lectures. Oh, how lucky are we to have Will Leitch. Oh, well, the time has come for Will Leitch to come up here. It's amazing. That's the trick, right? You got it. Okay, sorry. Are there any questions? Other questions? Yes?
Does your son's friend, I forgot his name,
Miller. Yeah.
you've written this book?
He does. In fact, that is actually something I meant to talk about and forgot because I got too busy making jokes, which is one of the key things about this. And I think this is a very important, listen, as you may have noticed, I am an able-bodied person writing about a disability that I do not have. And there is a school of thought that I should not be able to write about that condition at all. I obviously don't agree. I wrote it. But I understand it. And I think that the key thing for me, one of the things that's been very gratifying about the book is that the SMA community has embraced it and has actually made it a big part of even their marketing campaigns. And one of the things I hear from a lot of people that have SMA or frankly similar disabilities, cerebral palsy or even ALS, is they'll often say something like, every time I read a book about someone with a disability, I'm immediately on guard and be like, okay, let's see how this idiot screwed it up. Which I totally understand. The same way that if I watch a movie about I'm a baseball fan. If I watch a movie about baseball and they're all they're holding the bat upside down, I'm like, this book doesn't know, these people don't know what they're doing. And so I understand that. And so the key for that, for me, is this is where the journalism part comes. I spoke to literally hundreds of people with SMA, their families, got their personal stories. One of the things about Daniel's unable to speak. He narrates the book, but he's unable to speak, and that's because he injured his jaw. Not most people with SMA can speak. I would say most can speak, but one of the things I learned from talking to people with SMA is once you don't, because it's a progressive disease, once you stop using something for a while, it stops working and you're unable to do it anymore. And so Daniel hurt his jaw and therefore was unable to talk. And there's all sorts of anecdotes that Daniel talks about, friends. Those are all straight from my conversations. So then when I got the book, I got my draft done and got all set up, and then I went back to everyone with SMA, including Miller, and said, will you please read this and tell me what I got wrong? And they did. They did, and to me, that's exactly what I wanted. That's the point, right? And I think that we were talking about options earlier, and I don't know if again anyone that's ever had anything optioned or not optioned, that you always don't want to say anything about because it's probably not going to get made. Anytime you get something optioned, it's always just a crapshoot. So I'm aware of talking too much about it. But one of the things that the person that opted it, that I talked to her about very vividly, and we both agreed, that's why we agreed for her to take the option, is the main character needs to be played by someone with a disability. The days of I am Sam are mercifully behind us. And so I think that so much of that, I always, one of my general things with writing, whether it's journalism or fiction, is the more specific you are about something, the more universal it feels. Because even if you are very specific and very personal and get all the little details of a moment or an emotion right, someone may have not had that experience, but they will recognize the emotion, and they will recognize, and it will feel as if they lived it. It's funny. There's two. I host a movie podcast because you need me talking a lot, I guess. And last week we actually talked about the movies The Tree of Life and Moonlight, which are two of actually my favorite movies of all time. And the things that are great about those movies, though I have shared no life experiences with either the characters in The Tree of Life or Moonlight, but they're so specific about what the characters are going through and so specific emotions that I feel like I have lived the lives of the people in those movies, though I haven't, because they connect with emotions to me that I haven't personally experienced. So Miller loves it. He's super super cocky about it. He thinks it's like so cool. But I think he also is. They still live in Charleston, and he and my son still play. We get together with him twice a year over the 4th and over Thanksgiving, and we always and mostly because now Miller is almost with him and Miller and my son are almost 12. So, he's still, one thing about Daniel is Daniel's a little older than Miller. There's actually a drug called Spinraza it's been a breakthrough drug really in the last 5 or 10 years. It doesn't cure SMA. There is no cure for SMA, but it slows the progression. So Miller has perhaps a little bit more hope than maybe Daniel does. But to me, one of the great things about Daniel, Daniel's best friend Travis, they're the same age. One thing I thought would be really interesting is, Daniel's 26. His best friend is also 26, but Daniel is at potentially near the end of his life, whereas his friend doesn't even know what he's going to do with his life yet. And I thought it was really interesting to have the two of them be in different sort of life cycles, but still having grown up together and known each other forever. So, but yeah, Miller likes it. There's a few. My son likes it as well. They both get after me for the bad words. There are some bad words. I mean, not like bad words, just just vulgarities. I would say this would get you a PG-13. Which is to say, there's a scene where Molaram pulls a heart out of a chest and smashes it. No, that's what got the PG-13 rating, not actually what it is a PG-13 rating. So, but yes, so that is yeah. No, but he loves it, and I really cannot emphasize enough how grateful I have been to the SMA community. They did not. They had the same skepticism of this book that I think a lot of people that would have, and I absolutely understand that, and I think that I've been very grateful that they've been such big fans and supporters. Okay, it's 3:55. Beach of the Park. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
So why does New York, the richest city in the country, have such crappy professional sports teams?
I actually have written about that because I write weekly sports columns for New York Magazine. I'm not going to get too into detail on this, I promise. But my theory is that my theory about this is it's actually the New York media. And I mean the actual city media, not almost all the media works in New York, but the people that actually cover the teams. It's so competitive because there's so many reporters there that I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan. I'm sorry, I'm an 11-time champion St. Louis Cardinals fan, and in St. Louis there are fewer media people, and they tend to players often you're going to have to pay me a lot to come to New York because every time I strike out, they're going to call me a jerk on the back page of the paper. And I think it becomes, people aren't allowed to fail without being lambasted for it. It leads often to a lot of drama. And so a lot of times the teams, from my experience, teams need to figure themselves out in private and kind of deal with their issues internally. And as a journalist, I don't want that to happen. I want them to all get out so I can write about it. But generally speaking, I think that's the main reason. And yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. Yes?
So I forgot on the last one, but we asked the earlier folks, do you write in silence? Do you write in loud cafes? I mean, what is your...
I have not, because I started at Deadspin in 2005, and that was the last time I've worked in an office. So last time I've been working at home since 2005. It was great until all of a sudden you people were everywhere. I had a coffee shop to myself, and all of a sudden you're all there, and you're all so bad at it, by the way. so it is funny. I joke because I of course love working at home and encourage everyone to do it. But now as we get longer in the pandemic, longer into this, and more people are still working at home, and my coffee shop is still crowded. I think it's time for America to get back to work. My journalism work I can write. I've written on deadline so many times and in crowded press rooms that I can write. But for the novels, I gotta have silence. I actually would say I write the same. I do not. People often ask because I write a lot of nonfiction stuff and a lot of journalism and reporting and columns and stuff. And is it different? Do you put on the press hat and then put on the serious author hat? It's writing. It's the same thing. I'm probably more aware that if they find a mistake in this, I will never live it down. Whereas in a newspaper piece, it's just, like your bird is pooping on it in like 24 hours. And so you can't get too attached to it. But no, I could. I mean, you do what, if you buy a copy of The Time Has Come, you do whatever you want to do with it. If you'd like to wipe up bird droppings or any dog or an atypical pet like an iguana, you may use the book for whatever you'd like it to. But the point is that like I write. I listen to music very loudly, and I like to have all the lights off. And I like to, and it's easier now that my children are now 11 and 8, so they have learned. My wife also works at a home. She's interior decorator. Alexa Stevenson on Instagram, by the way. I just want to be able to I still got to keep making a living. I'd love it if I could just focus on these. Anyway, so we both work at a home, and so our children have learned that when Daddy has the lights off, that don't go in there. Don't go in there, because I turn my music very loud and really just focus in on the thing. I'm very much in a different plane of existence, I would probably say. Yes, ma'am.
I was just thinking about the two types of writing that you do, the people that you cover.
Yeah.
So in sports, you're covering people who are physically really, really fit. And then you've written a book about a young man who is losing everything physical about his being. Have you found how does that work for you, or is there anything that has transcended from one of those to the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. Usually when people say it's a great question, it's because they're trying to come up with an answer, and there's it's a great question. It's still a great question. Still a great question. But that actually is a legitimately great question that I'm still formulating an answer to. But I would say this. I would say that the primary connection I've found between them is actually, one thing about athletes is, it's really kind of insane when you think about it. The average athlete career ends at, if you're lucky, 31, 32 years old, if you're fortunate. This is something you have done your entire life. If you were made to become a professional athlete, somebody noticed at 4 that you were special, that you were different, and that talent needed to be fostered and put together and nurtured, and it's become your central focus. I would often argue to the kid's detriment in a lot of ways. I think Roger Federer has talked very eloquently about how one of the reasons he's had a successful tennis career was he didn't just play tennis. He did a lot of things, and he diversified and became a healthy productive member of society. Tiger Woods, I think someone would be a different example of that. I'm not saying that Tiger Woods is a terrible person. He was focused so much on golf for so long. And I think what happens a lot of times is people get to be 30, 31 years old, and the thing they've trained their entire life to do, they're suddenly too old to do at 31. And the struggles that athletes have figuring that out and figure out what to do with their lives, it often leads to alcoholism and a lot of issues and anxiety and depression. So the idea of someone being young but also being old, I would say that I thought about that a little bit when I was kind of putting Daniel's story together. The idea, that's why I love the contrast with him and Travis, because again, Travis is I hope if you ever read the book, you're going to love Travis. Travis is I would say most people love Daniel, but Travis is like a combination of Shaggy, Scooby-Doo, Willie Nelson, Foghorn Leghorn, and I don't know, LeBron James. I don't know. I'm just trying to see our names now. But he's a very funny character and a very lovable character. And his thing with Daniel, he just loves Daniel so much. I thought it was important to have a character who knew Daniel forever. Because a lot of people, as anyone with SMA will tell you, particularly with someone as severe as Daniel's, that kind of comes back when people see you for the first time. And as I talked about with people at the race, they'll do the, can I help you with something? No one wants that. And I wanted someone like Travis who's known him forever and speaks to him the way a friend talks to a friend, which is to say, just to give them crap all the time. And I think that's kind of an important thing. So I would say that'd be the closest thing to it. Okay, I think we're almost at 4, so I think I can do one more. And if you're running this and you want me off stage immediately, you raise your hand and ask the question and ask me what time it is. What time is it? Hey, it's 4 o'clock. We're done. There we go. All right. Thank you very much.